Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of End Racism. I am Preacher Moss. I'm happy to be a part of this production, and we hope that everybody's going to find something meaningful to take out of this discussion. We have some great guests, but before we even do that, we have to take care of some housekeeping, and that means getting a proper send-off, a proper start to this, and we cannot get it properly started out without our beloved sister, Dr. Sister Nisa Muhammad from Howard University, who's going to lead us in dua or the opening prayer.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Rahman Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, ihdinas siratal mustaqim, siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Ameen. Welcome to our second issue of Ending Racism. And I want to introduce you to we're very excited to have our guests this evening, and I want to introduce them to you. Our guests are Imam Talib from Masjid Muhammad, the nation's masjid here in Washington, D.C. We also have for us this evening Sheikh Yahya, who studied Islam overseas for 13 years and has earned degrees in Sharia, Arabic, and economics. We also have Imam Jami Muhammad from the Ann Arbor Muslim community. He studied at Wayne Community College and studied up under the late Imam, civil rights leader, and Memphis City Council member, Dr. Talib Kareem Muhammad. And he served as an assistant imam for Dr. Muhammad at Masjid John Hassan in Highland Park, Michigan. Now let me turn it over to our co-host for the evening, Attorney Talib Kareem, President of the Academy for Muslim Achievement and CEO for Aid Legal, one of our sponsors. And thank you so much for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum, and we welcome you to the End of Racism, a conversation about how we bring an end to the system of division in our country based on race, and in some cases religion, and even gender, through using the excellent example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, particularly in Medina, but not exclusively, taking lessons from both his time in establishing his grassroots community, starting from his own household and then expanding outward to becoming, a small number of people and ultimately becoming a power in the entire world. We are looking forward to a wonderful conversation this evening with a cadre of leaders in our community. And the way we came to this conversation is through my experience as a professor of labor law at Bowie State University, a small college, historically Black college in Maryland. And at the beginning of every semester, I used to ask my students a couple of questions. First of all, I would ask them, A, how did racism begin? And B, who were the first slaves here in the United States? Because most of the students would answer the first question, that racism began with slavery. And I would have to correct them and advise them that, in fact, as we know in the Quran, in the very beginning, Allah says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And in that, Allah is pointing the finger at the first racist, the first who was so arrogant to think. And he said, when asked in this surah, Allah is saying that the first to claim that he was superior based upon racial identity was Satan, or Iblis. For he said that خلقتني من النار وخلقه من الطين. You created me out of fire, right? I can shapeshift, I can fly, and you only created him, that is pointing to Adam, out of dirt. He can't do any of the things that you allow me to do. But Allah said, "A'lamu ma la ta'lamun." I know that which you don't know. And alhamdulillah, we know what Allah goes on in the Quran to explain the error of Iblis, and how, as a result of his arrogance and his, false instinct of superiority, he went on to become one of the cursed, and all those who followed him follow in that same foot track. And so we bring this back to the beginning of this country, and we share with our students that, in fact, the early settlers of this country, began the building of this country before even the first Africans were enslaved. And so who were they? They were none other than those people who were enslaved already in Europe, and those were the serfs. And so we analyze that in that way so we can help the students understand a historical perspective that slavery was not racialized, and it did not become racialized until generations after the first slaves landed here in this country. And so with that concept in mind, you can understand, you could help the students understand that this wasn't always the way in which our society is broken up and divided by race, was not always the case. And so in order to get to the end of this current situation, we need to find a way out. We need to find a model. And I share with my students that the best model for a multiracial, building a multiracial, multi-ethnic, and multi-tribal society is found in the life of the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him 1,400 years ago. And so I am excited about the conversation that we have begun today. We have a wonderful array of speakers who are set and are ready to begin sharing with you their own personal experiences as Muslims in this country, and as people who have experienced racism. And we're looking forward to their vision, and we're looking forward to the lessons that they have. We had on the screen, just briefly, Imam Talib Sharif, whose name, who oftentimes gets confused, or people mistake me for him, and they greet me as Imam Talib, and I have to remind him that I'm only the attorney Talib, but the Imam Talib is the person who you need to be speaking to. And alhamdulillah, we actually have Imam Talib on, and that's Imam Talib Sharif. Imam Talib, we welcome you to the end of racism, and we ask if you can impart on those who are here your understanding, your personal experiences as coming into this faith of Islam, your experiences with racism as an African American, and your experiences and how you were treated as an African American by your fellow brothers and sisters in faith, and what lessons you draw upon from the life and the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Talib Sharif from the Nation's Masjid in Washington, D.C. Please take it away.
Assalamu alaikum, Talib.
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud, and the entire world can hear you.
Some feedback.
We hear you perfectly,
You're not
brother.
coming through clear, so I'm not sure. I mean, you're breaking up, so.
You're coming through clear, brother, man. Go right ahead.
Okay, so. Okay, I missed most of what you said. I apologize, but you were breaking up as you were coming in, so I heard you mention my name.
Yes, you're on live, brother, man. You're on live right now. Go ahead and share with the viewers and the audience your perspectives as coming into the faith of Islam, your experiences with racism, and even the difficulty that you've encountered with your own brothers and sisters in faith, and what lessons from the Prophet Muhammad, as well as the teachings of the late Warathdin Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him as well.
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. I greet you all, my believers, the listening audience, with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, my dear brother Talib and others, Dr. Nisai, and my dear brother Preacher Mark, and my esteemed panelists. I'm honored to be with all of you. And again, I hope I'm coming through clear. And I'm saying that because my dear brother, Attorney Talib, is breaking up on my end. So I'm again hoping I'm coming through clear. And some of you, again, may be aware of me. Just some history. I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I wanted to say that because it has a lot to do with the racial piece that I experienced. And in Wilmington, North Carolina, for those who don't know, that was a big piece of the Civil War, with the quote unquote what they call the United States Colored Troops. That's what the official group, and they were very instrumental in freeing Wilmington, freeing the port, and they settled after the war. After the Civil War ended, several hundred of those colored troops settled in Wilmington, the city where I grew up at. And so in 1898, by that time, the city had become very prosperous. Now, I know we hear about Tulsa and other places, but many might not know about Wilmington, North Carolina. But they had become very prosperous. The city, in fact, they had the government. And just like most of the places, the whites moved out. And then, of course, when they saw it being very successful, they became very jealous. And of course, they had white supremacy and they had Jim Crow. So a massacre, a serious massacre took place in Wilmington, and a coup d'état. They unseated the government, which was we African American, and they took the city. A lot of people lost their homes. A lot of things took place. So I ended up growing up there. So that kind of give you an idea of the kind of things I had to experience, and all the stuff I kind of glimpsed. I was young, but I still had a glimpse of the separate racial in terms of water fountains, bathrooms, couldn't go to public parks, the movie theater. I remember going to the movie theater. We had to go to the balcony, those kind of things. So I experienced a lot of stuff growing up. And eventually we joined the movement. I was young, but I followed my uncle who joined the movements in the society, Black Panther. He didn't join that. It was one similar to that, and because of the Nation of Islam. And then, of course, we came into the Universal Islam. And that's where I came. And certainly, when you come into even going through the nation, again, for those who are listening, I'm talking about the original. I'm not talking about the current now. I went through the original as a young person. And but you were told then that when you become a Muslim, that you become a brother in the universal brotherhood of Muslims all around the world. So we believe that. We actually believe that. And of course, my dear brother, Attorney Talib, mentioned that in the Ummah, we certainly have experienced that not to be the case. That we haven't been accepted globally, whether we're in the universal or not. We find that there's prejudice still in the Ummah, and of course, that brings us to where we want to talk about here in this topic here is obviously the Medina model and what took place in the time of our dear Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And of course, we know Bilal's story, and Bilal's story, I won't go through it because most of us know the story. And we know that his story is our story here in America, basically coming from slavery and then being free, and what Islam has done for us, and how his position really, as Malcolm said, it is the key to freeing all the African Americans in this country in terms of not just physical, but also mental and spiritual and intellectual. Islam is the religion to do that, and he was exactly right. But we know Bilal, this individual who was loved dearly by our prophet, again, the praise and peace be upon him, loved dearly, who had gone through much trouble. We all know, again, his story. In fact, I don't find in the history no one who suffered more at the hands of they were kafir, the pagans. No one who suffered more at the hands, particularly over an extended period of time, and so much like Bilal. And then of course, he was freed. Islam freed him. He became equal with them. He was all equal in the eyes of Allah, as we know, but with them. And I want to say that he was already free. He was free because he told him, "You got my body, but you don't have me. I'm free." He said, "My soul is free for God, and you can do what you want to do with my body." So he had already had freedom, spiritually and internally. But Allah blessed him to be his whole life to be free. And so Islam frees. You're equal. You become brother, because the Prophet, first peace upon him, you call him brother, something that was unheard of at that particular time, and then elevated him. So this is what Islam has done. And then we find after he done all of that some of the companions during the life of the Prophet still had problems with Bilal. His skin was darker. They were lighter. And the ones who had lighter skin had issues with the ones who had darker skin. And they ridiculed him. They made disparaging comments about him. So much so that the Prophet peace upon him had to make comments about it, and had to let them know. Basically, he said, what you see in Bilal is in you. And he said, we are all Bilal. We are all Bilal. And so that really brings us to where we are now. What we've gone through as African Americans here, really, the Bilal being our story. And some now still, because it's been in the world where those who are darker, again, what the black and white is really new. As a race, it's new in civilization. Really, it's really new. It's not that old. Wasn't considered race in the history like it is today, but certainly they noted the shades and everything. And so yeah, we have that problem here today, where we are still looked down upon by those from those same lands, even though it was addressed by our dear Prophet, again, the prayers peace upon him, at that time. Someone he loved dearly, and in fact, Bilal he's a prophetic figure. Some don't realize that Bilal is a prophetic figure, because our dear beloved Prophet, the praise be upon him, again saw him in the future. In the future, he saw him in the future, pictured him in the future, and that makes him a prophetic figure. But I won't get into that at this time. But we should know that about him as well. And again, he spoke. When we look at the last days of our Prophet's life, last moments in his summation of works, he lived the things. He asked people. He gave us a basic rundown of what he did, what he was supposed to do, and of course he asked them the question, did he feel it, and they responded back. In that address, he focused on and gave attention to certain matters, and that's then. Medina had been established, Medina had been established, address many things. These are matters that he gave special attention to over 1,400 years ago, and they're still very important concerns for us today as human beings. Of course, again, him being a prophet, he said, those who are here, make sure those who are not here. We take that forward now. Again, and to us, message to us, and to address the quality of human life. But it's our model. It's not just about that type. So look at all these things. Some to reach the property, the possibilities of human oppression, persecution, and the interests of race, ethnicity. That's humanity. And when we look at where we are today, those things are relevant to us today. So I'll stop there, and we can.
Alhamdulillah. We really appreciate you, brother Imam, for your guidance. It was clearly a powerful.
Because hopefully the static is out by this time now that I was hearing.
Yes. Yes, we appreciate you, Brother Imam. You were amazing. And we thank Allah, particularly on the history of Bilal ibn Rabah. And people don't understand, as the Imam said, that as those of us who study the life.
I don't know if that's the same for everyone.
Right. We hear you loud and clear, Brother Imam. And I was saying that as you were mentioning, in terms of the life of Bilal ibn Rabah, those who study the blessed Sirah wal Miraj, the ascension of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the travel, the night travel from Mecca to Beit al-Maqdis, and from Beit al-Maqdis in Jerusalem up to the first, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, and the sixth, and to the seventh heaven. And from there, from the seventh heaven, coming up to the curtain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being in the presence of Allah, this beautiful journey, and how he and during the journey passed not only through heaven but even through hell. And so he was able to see in his time and his experience, as was mentioned, he was able to see certain members of his own flock, his own companions, who were in paradise. And he said, as was mentioned, that he said that he saw the footprints of Bilal ibn Rabah in paradise itself. And that's a powerful concept. Another powerful concept, as was mentioned by the Imam, was the fact of how, again, the racialization and even the description of the prophets has even become, again, tainted by the current caste system in which we find ourselves. You look at it, for example, even the New Testament speaks of Christ as being, again, the color of burnt iron. And yet there are pictures depicting him looking like Leonardo da Vinci. Again, these are the examples of again, what we're talking about. And we believe that this isn't by mistake, but this is, again, nothing less than a manifestation of Satan, Iblis's own efforts to, again, lead and move astray, or to lead astray as many people as possible through the creation of this type of division that has, again, crept into the teachings of the religions of this world. And so, alhamdulillah, we thank Allah for that message. Imam Talib Sharif from Masjid Muhammad, the Nation's Mosque, the Nation's Masjid here in Washington, D.C., and we look forward to any questions that you all have for the Imam. Please put them into the comment section, and also feel free to like and share this podcast with others. Let us now go to Sheikh Yahya Hunt, who, again, has studied extensively overseas, and he can please share with us your own journey, Sheikh, to Islam. Who did you study with, and what were the experiences that you had as an African American studying in the places that you studied, and in terms of the experiences with those who were not from your own community, and what lessons do you draw upon from the examples of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, and maybe even some of the other Anbiya, the other prophets that you believe are relevant to today's conversation?
Thank you, Attorney Talib and Dr. Nisa. Thank you for having me here. To both of you, as well as the other participants and the viewers, I say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That said, I don't know how much time we have for me to talk about my journeys and things that have happened to me, mashallah. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I live here, after my time overseas, I returned. In my youth, I did experience quite a bit of racism. I'm not old enough to have seen, colored water fountains or things like that. But I've been called the N-word and spit upon. I've been profiled by police many, many times. I've been harassed. So I've had experiences of racism prior to becoming Muslim. And I'll say that in general, after my conversion to Islam, and especially after I began dressing in the way of the Sunnah of our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I actually experienced a lot less of those things. I found that the police were more interested in profiling the young, urban-looking black kids than the black guy wearing a thobe with a beard. So I feel I escaped quite a bit of that kind of singling out treatment after I became a Muslim, although I may have experienced a bit more of it in the airports. But there's some give and take. But specifically in relation to your question about my experiences when I was overseas, I would concur that there is definitely prejudice among people. And one of the more interesting things that used to happen to me a lot when I was living in Arab countries was that I found that people didn't really know how to relate to me. Because I'm American, they're sort of socialized to want to look up to me because I guess they've received some media of some kind that sort of made them to want to look up to Americans. But then when they see the color of my skin, they question how American I am, and they always want to ask me where I'm from. When I explain to them that I'm American, they're like, "Yeah, but where are you really from?" And they don't want to accept me as American. They want to ask where my parents are from or where my grandparents are from. And of course, my family's been here in the U.S. for centuries. My family is documented to have been here in the 1600s and may have been here even in the early 1600s. So I'm as American as any white person that lives here, but I feel that they never wanted to accept that. And then if I say to them, well, if you go back enough centuries, then my family hails from somewhere in West Africa. Only then do they want to accept, who I am. And then they would now have a new problem because just as they're socialized to look up to Americans, they had been socialized to look down upon Africans. And now they would look at me with these sort of strange looks as if they couldn't justify the two. Like they don't know, should they admire me or whether they should sort of look down upon me. And this was an experience that happened to me, dozens of times, virtually every person I met. Some people would find all kinds of bizarre excuses to try to make sense of what they're seeing. When they see that I speak Arabic and speak Arabic well, they would kind of assume me to be one of the darker Arabs. They'd ask me if I'm from Saudi Arabia or Sudan or someplace like that because, they have their preconceived notions. But on the whole, I wouldn't say that these sorts of prejudices were an actual hurdle for me. It was more of an annoyance. On the whole, I did experience a sense of brotherhood when I was with Muslims overseas. And of course, the schools that I attended were not exclusively attended by Arabs. There were students from Asian countries, students from African countries, students from Middle Eastern and Central Asian countries, and students from Europe and America and Western countries. And the brotherhood of Islam, I felt, was always on display. So if there was something I wanted to say as far as what Islam could offer to get us through this, one of them is to remember what it says in Surah Ali Imran, where it says, واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا. This ayah, it means, remember the blessing that Allah bestowed upon you and that you were enemies and Allah brought your hearts together and you became brothers. Okay, this is an important notion, and it's already been mentioned earlier in the program, and I want to reiterate it. Islam emphasizes that we, the Muslims, are all brothers. There's a brotherhood of all Muslims. And while it may not always feel that way, one of the keys to us solving the issues of racism and prejudice that we experience is to promote this notion of brotherhood. But I don't think in and of itself it's sufficient. And I've thought a bit about this. And honestly, I have not made up my mind what the best path to take is. But I think in order to solve the problem of racism, we need to actually define what racism is. And I don't know that we agree on that. You know, you have some people who believe that racism is a sort of malicious hate, that if you're actively trying to discriminate against people, and that's what racism is. And if that's your definition of racism, then for sure, you know, there are plenty of ayahs and hadith that we can use to oppose that. You know, there's the well-known hadith, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شَعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, that Allah made us different tribes and different ethnicities so that we can get to know one another, not to separate us, but so that we can get to know one another. You know, and it follows right after that in the ayah, "Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum," that the best of us is whichever one has the most taqwa. You know, so we are not better than one another based on our lineages and based on our skin colors and based on whatever else people might want to divide us based on. We become better. I mean, personally, we individually rise to higher levels by, you know, by chasing after taqwa and trying to reach that. You know, this is not a group thing. An individual person may be very pious and other members of his racial group or ethnic group may not be. The entire group does not rise or fall with the behavior of individuals. And I think that is an important idea that might be a way out of this for us, is if we could just sort of stop thinking in terms of groups, if we can stop promoting stereotypes of whole groups that will only reinforce themselves, because whenever you see an individual do something in agreement with the stereotype, it'll reinforce the stereotype. And if you see someone going against the stereotype, you'll just dismiss it as an oddity or a one-off thing. And these stereotypes, they just persist generation after generation. But if we can train people to judge one another as individuals and not to judge whole groups based on the behavior of a few, we might have a way out of this. But on the other hand, you have people who define racism very differently. They don't define it as active discrimination. They define racism as implicit bias and systemic bias and differential outcomes in society. And if that's the definition of racism that you're using, then, you know, I struggle to find in what I've learned of Islam, I struggle to find a clear solution to that. But nonetheless, I remain resolved in my heart, as it says in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. It says that we have in the Messenger of Allah a good model for us to follow. So for sure, whatever the answer is, it's to be found in his example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't propose that we look elsewhere to find our path, to find a way out of this. For guidance comes from the one whom Allah sent. And with that, I'll pause for the next person. Barakallahu feekum.
Alhamdulillah. I really appreciate that outstanding reflection from our beloved brother in Baltimore. And I want to note that Imam Sheikh Yahya was amongst the few Muslim leaders in this country who, when the call went out by Muslim lawyers like myself for Muslim leaders to take a stand, because there were some people who were calling themselves Muslims, but they were putting forth legal positions in the highest court of the land, at the United States Supreme Court, to suggest that somehow Islam stood in support of people who wanted to basically engage in fornication with people of the same sex, and that they wanted to have their identifications be based upon their sexual preferences, and then wanted the government to protect that preference, and wanted to force and compel people who may not agree with that preference to still nevertheless hire them, even to work in the schools teaching their children. The imam from Baltimore, again, was one of the few Muslim leaders who were brave enough to say, no, that's not correct. And we need to make sure that the record is preserved. And alhamdulillah, even though this case was actually lost, the silver lining of it was that the record was corrected. And when the Supreme Court and what scholars of law look to and call the dissent, when they look at the dissent in that particular decision, they see that the only word, the only mention of Muslims is mentioned in the context of them being opposed to this particular, sexual preference. And that in itself is a blessing, even though the actual case did not go the way that we thought. And in fact, most people across the country thought, since this was a majority Republican Supreme Court. And so, alhamdulillah, I just wanted to, make mention because the case just came out, or ruling just came out last Monday. And again, we wanted to, for the record, let Imam and Sheikh Yahya Hunt know how grateful we were for his leadership, and we look forward to having some additional dialogue. And there's some questions we look forward to providing to him and the other speakers. Let us now go to Imam Jami Muhammad, who is really the senior leader in this conversation, and comes from someone from a generation that my father, Dr. Talib Kareem Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him and shower upon him and my mother his mercy. He was a companion of my father, who was a leader in the Detroit community of Islam, and they did a lot of great work. And rather than me, biographying or talking in detail about his journey, let me allow him to do so. And without any further ado, Imam Jami Muhammad of Detroit and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Welcome to the End of Racism.
Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I give praise and thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would benefit this gathering, and that he would have mercy on us and forgive us for any of our shortcomings or mistakes. It's in a forum like this, I would have to tell you that it's kind of hard for me to say something in just a few minutes, and that based on I've been on this planet 10 plus some more, and but alhamdulillah, the things that we have experienced, his father, myself, and his mother, we were able to, with just a little help, establish so many things. And I've had people ask me about writing a book, and I was like, were I to write a book, it would bring a lot of envy and jealousy out. To give you an example, in 1977, 1978, we negotiated with Dr. Mustafa Offer, who was the vice president of Wayne Community College. And we were able to establish an Islamic program, an Arabic studies program in Masjid John Hassan. Now, when they've had different type of celebrations about that, nobody wanted to know how it got started. And this program was going on up until a young brother was telling me they was trying to eliminate it maybe about a year and a half ago. Also, the racism, I experienced it in the military. I go to Canada as a Muslim and come back. They handcuffed me at the border. They barred me out of all of the prisons in the Midwest. I had some, then the FBI asked me to come down and see them. And they said to me that some of the places you've been, some of the presidents have made them haram. And I told them, you know, that pertains to you, not me, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns the earth, and the earth is spacious, and Allah has made it for the believers. So after they questioned me for about 3.5 hours, I said to them, I have a couple questions and comments that I would like to make to you. I said, first of all, you took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I've seen the money changers basically take over this whole planet, and I haven't heard you open your mouth. So let me know who you working for. Then I said to them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates riba, usury. And that it's just a matter of time before he bring it to a complete halt. Less than about a week, this was in 2008, the bottom fell out of the stock market. And everybody was running around scrambling. But we know that Allah is just, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has
I'm not sure if Imam Jami, can you hear us? He may be having some difficulty. But let us, while we're waiting for Imam Jami's sound to come back, we do have a question that we'd like to pose. And Dr. Nisab, would you like to read the questions that we have from our audience and see who in our community of guests would like to answer the first question?
This is the question you found in Facebook?
I think here it's on the side. It says, I think if white supremacy is functioning as religion, why does it appear that it's the most powerful practiced religion on earth in terms of arms? So the question, I guess, and this comes from AKHA Nice Events on I believe this is from YouTube. And so that is the question that we'd like to pose. Why is it that if racism is from Shaitan? Okay, let's kind of break it down. If racism is from Shaitan and Islam is from Allah the Almighty, why is it that it appears that those who are followers of racism have greater might over those who are followers of the message of Allah, and even those who claim to be followers of the message of Allah or followers of the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, that they have they're so weak that the mistreatment and the practices of those who appear to be following the teaching and inspiration of Shaitan. Let's maybe go to Imam Talib and go around to get feedback on that particular question, which is, I believe, amazing. Imam Talib, can you hear it?
I believe he's muted.
Imam Talib, we can't hear you. Yes, you're unmuted now.
Attorney, I've relocated to get a better signal. I have the benefit of hearing my respected brothers, and I missed the question, and I'm trying to. I've gotten better position. I mean, I heard you call my name, but I didn't hear the question.
Okay, Imam Talib, so the question is
breakage.
Great. So the question is, if Islam is the religion of Allah, and if racism is, let's say, the religion of Shaitan, then, and if Allah is superior to Shaitan, then why is it that those who, follow, the, let's say, religion of racism are more powerful than those who follow the path of Allah to his, through Islam, through his messenger, the Prophet ﷺ? And why is it that those who claim to be followers of the Prophet ﷺ are so weak that they even adopt the practices of those who follow Shaitan and engage in racism themselves? That's the question. Imam Talib, can you hear that? Did you hear that question?
Okay, my dear. I got pieces of it, so I'll try to work with what I have, what some of the things, if you can hear me, that I was able to get, that you want to know there seems to be strength in what Shaitan is presented to the world right now. It has a magnetism, but Islam obviously has the answer. So I didn't get it all, but let me we today is considered to be Father's Day, and I just want to say that really it should take us back to the first father, and this is where it all starts. The first father is being Adam, our common father for all of us as human beings. And he was confronted with Shaitan. We know the big issue was Shaitan was okay. Everything was okay. And I want to say that in this society, everything to a certain point for some was okay the way things were. And that's why we see now there's this interest in going back to the way things were. For them, it was okay. Satan was okay being in charge of the angels the way things were until we were presented. Allah presented something that was different. He presented something that was different. And then all of a sudden, then we see evolution. He wasn't Satan at first. Then we know he goes to evolution from the jinn, and then he becomes Iblis, and then he becomes Shaitan. But again, we don't see none of that until he's confronted now with things got to change, things something different. He didn't accept that. He didn't want to accept that, and so he goes through these changes and becomes Shaitan. Now, we do know Allah tells us, he says to us in the Quran, don't let happen to us what happened to our father Adam. And that they came out of their dress. Satan caused them, the parents, to come out of their dress. And this is what we have to get back to. This is the issue. They were in the dress. They had the power as long as they were in the dress. And this is the dress really that our dear beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam helped us to get to. We saw that dress in Medina. We saw a model in Medina. And let me say, I did hear our brother reciting one of the Quranic ayats. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليكم عليم خبير. Now, Allah says the one that gets the honor, the one that gets the one that is the best is the one that has this taqwa. Now, I want to say that. Because in another, and this is what I want to say that's going to make the difference and showing where the strength is, where the strength is not. Allah says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina aminu kunu qawamina." Now here Allah says, if you have faith in Him, if you trust Him, attention, those who trust me, who will believe in me, kunu qawamina lillahi shuhada bil qist. Be a people standing. Be a people standing as witnesses for Allah for justice. And don't let how you feel about people cause you to get off of that track. And he says that Adilu hu al aqrabu li taqwa. Now he says that justice, standing for justice, being for justice, is close to taqwa. Now he said the one that gets the honor of the differences that he's called to come on the earth is the one that's close to taqwa. Now that's what Satan caused Adam to come out of. In the Quran lets us know that the dress that they were in, the labis, was taqwa. They were dressed taqwa. Now Satan didn't come at him through taqwa. He got him to come out of taqwa. He came at him through his appetites, and that's one of the things we know Ramadan tries to help us. And that tells us, respected brother Attorney Talib and the audience, that a lot of us, we are taking off track, getting off the mark because we're attracted to things. We're letting appetites for certain things distract us from standing, and we know we standing together, standing firm. We have an obligation in the society. We got order. Now, Allah commands us to take a stand. The Prophet gave us 3 things that we are to do. He gave us an order. When we see that there's injustice and something wrong in society, we're supposed to act. We're supposed to act. If we can't act, then we're supposed to speak. And this is the order. And if we can't speak, then we'll at least hit it on hard. But when we look at even the protests we're seeing now, we look at some of the positions that the Muslims take. This is wrong in society. We have an obligation to what's wrong that we see in the society. We're not supposed to sit still, and we're not supposed to hit it in our heart if we can do. He say, if you find no way to do the first one, then you speak. If you find a way to do that, then you hate it. So we have not been obeying. We have look, our dear Prophet, again, the prayer peace upon him, he left the model community in Medina, the city of light, the dignified city, the city where people, we know Medina means to be civil. Civilization would took place there. Look, let me say this. In human society, there have been 3 great attempts to establish free societies for human beings. Ibrahim alayhi salam established one. The first attempt, not he attempted to establish it. The second attempt in human society was with Muhammad the Prophet, again, the President, peace be upon him, in Medina. This enduring civilization that he was very successful in forming this society that had direct responsibility to Allah Ta'ala. And we know in that society that the consequences, the implications of that, it had human freedom and progress. They didn't have police departments. We know they policed themselves. Now, the third attempt, now look at this. The third attempt in human society to establish this type of society, a free society under God, didn't occur again of the American Revolution. Now that should tell us something, because we end up being here. Now the person, the scholar that studied this, they have evidence to show that America, that it drew from and it built upon the first two to get its society going and moving forward. So this is really created for us here as Muslims. If we just grab onto what Allah has for us and what He's telling us to do,
Alhamdulillah, Imam, we appreciate
He's
you.
already shaped us, evolved in terms of to be what we are now, all from around the world. Here in this society, this is the place all from where we're here together. And if we can just hold on to what Allah Ta'ala has given us, we can begin to establish. We're only supposed to contribute to the model, that Medina model, so that model stays. We have an obligation to do that. That model has to stay on the throne. We have an obligation to do that. And we serve that brother as we examine how brothers became brothers that were different. Those who migrated, who were migrants, versus those who are already residents. The answer, when they came together, respected each other, and we began to see the model. Again, the model was under Allah Ta'ala. That's be able to overcome. And society is really right for us if we don't fall to color consciousness and get into the black. That's a distraction. We'll never be successful if we focus on color. We'll never be successful. Again, that's new in history. The remedy for this society was the help that came for us in this society here in America. Some you can disagree. That's okay. It came with Elijah because he neutralized white in this society. You associated with the divine, the pictures of God, angels, everything, and you couldn't compete with that. So he, as for strategy, the elevation of color, the black also became God, but that wasn't the goal. That wasn't the goal. That was just to neutralize, and then where we are now into universals as Muslim Americans. That was the goal, and we're moving towards. If we can just now work on coming together as brothers, and stop the little brother, big brother, shunning your brother, these kind of things that we are seeing, we can be the help that America needs to overcome the problems that we're seeing. Just as we gave them the strength, the identities that we see in America, and I conclude with this: the identities that we see among African Americans came from the strongest movement in America by Muslim African Americans. We were called Negroes and other and nigger and before. And it was Elijah Muhammad that began to put on black, and then all of a sudden James Brown took that, and then we began to call black. Black before that was not something considered a word that give us dignity. After that, Imam Muhammad and him evolving us, he from that to African American. Jesse Jackson heard him say that, and then Jesse Jackson made African American. But the goal is to get consciousness to the state of consciousness and content where Allah Ta'ala wants us to be as human beings, to be human first, to be Muslim first, and I'll end with.
Thank you, Imam Talib, so much for those comments. They're so very helpful. So as we wind up our show, we want to end with this last question for our two other imams, Sheikh Yahya and Imam Jami. We would like for you to please respond to this final question in a very short way. What can we do in our own ways, in our own communities, in our own masjids to do something concrete to end racism? What can I do myself? What can each of us do in our own way, in our own masjid, to do something about this problem of racism?
Whose turn is it? Is it my turn?
Yes. Do you want to answer from both of you? Decide who wants to go
Okay,
first.
sure. I'll go first. That's fine. Um, it is my belief that, when I look at the United States, I find that the more the places that are more likely to have racists and to have serious problems with racism are the places where there's not as much diversity. Where you have lots of white people who don't really interact in a social way with black people, or where you have a police force where the majority of their interactions with black people are not interactions where they come as equals or as peers, but where they come as, one person having the power and the other person being in a position of submission. Those are not the sorts of interactions that build understanding and lead to people seeing one another as human beings with all of the frailties of human beings. So I would say one of the most concrete things that we can do, honestly, and this may sound cheesy, but we need to increase the diversity in our communities, have more people actually come into contact with more people. It, I don't think that it's in our interests for us to have like we have right now, where some of the Muslim communities are black Muslim communities, and then there's another community that is, Pakistani communities, and the Africans have their own community, and no one is really mixing with one another. Uh, I think to the extent that we can have real diversity, meaning real partnerships, real cooperation between the communities, I think that will do the most to actually help, because at that point we have vested interests with one another. And so the more that we can start businesses in these communities and build bridges and other sorts of collaborative initiatives, that is the kind of thing that's going to bear fruit down the road. And I think that's something concrete that we can do right now. Anyone can go to a mosque and propose a joint event. Anyone can go to a mosque and propose that we start a fund for some project that all of the communities are taking part in. And while it may not lead to an immediate solution, I think that kind of thing bears significant fruit in the future.
That's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much. Okay, ma'am Jamie, please close us out.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Yes, I think one of the things that we can do, as Sheikh Yahya said, is go and be around different types of people. Because Rasulullah SAW said, people are your best resources. And when you're around different types of people, you'd be surprised the type of resources that exist. One of the reasons that America has been one of the world powers is because of the diversity. Everybody comes here. And unfortunately, we haven't done that as Muslims here. One of the things that we used to do, we used to always have, like, maybe in the middle of the week, a Tuesday night, a community type dinner where we invited the community. And you can do that with the Muslim community also. One of the problems we have, it's hard for us to work together because we don't know each other, because we don't spend no time with each other. And if I was to ask you, would you go in business with me? He said, well, I don't know you, Imam Jami. We have to get to know each other And we have to make efforts. And one of the things, we got to be patient with each other. It hurts me to my heart. I see brothers and sisters on the internet arguing each other to Jahannam. And I was like, where was Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in all of that? He didn't wish Jahannam on nobody. He even asked Shaitan to turn from his ways, and he would intercede for him. And so just some common things, courtesy, manners, and know that the way people are acting, they're not our teachers. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the teacher for you and I. And as a brother was saying, I tell my twin daughters, don't get hung up in that calling about blackness and everything. Listen, if you're not getting together with people that's moving towards Allah and moving towards Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I can tell you with authority, it's a dead end. So, assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. I think that was profound. And I think that as you reflect on what Imam both Talib has shared, what Imam Yahya, Imam Jami, and even Dr. Nisa Muhammad, it is without doubt that if we are serious about bringing about the end of racism, which we as Muslims, we must believe that we have the ability, that Allah has the ability to allow us to get to that point as an article really of faith, because to not believe is a statement of disbelief, of hopelessness. And so, alhamdulillah, on the one hand, we believe that it is a part of our faith to understand that we can defeat the evil of shaitan on the one hand, and the second of all, that the first battle that we must engage in is the battle, again, as the Sheikh said, is the battle, or they call the fitna to nafs. You know what I mean? The battle within ourselves. Because as my father, Rahimatullah alayhi, Dr. Talib Kareem Muhammad used to teach, is that we hate each other. We hate ourselves. And as Imam Jami knows, I know you remember his teaching of the two evil twins, right? Two evil twins that appear in our midst. He used to teach on are envy and jealousy. Envy and jealousy. And again, we as African American Muslims in particular, have been cursed by this envy and jealousy. And as a result of this envy and jealousy, just the same that cursed again the children of Adam alayhi salam, the immediate children were cursed because they again had envy and jealousy, and so we believe that it's important to squash out that envy and jealousy. And if we can squash out that envy and jealousy within ourselves, this even comes within our own families. You can have people who are Muslims and are brothers and sisters both in faith and in blood, and yet again can be engaged in envy and jealousy, and therefore not able to work together to even stay alive in the pandemic of COVID. This is what we're facing. And so again, in fact, we know that in the surah, the last surah in the Quran, Surah Nas, it says, "Qul a'udhu birabbil nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswasil nas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jinnati wan nas." Again, or "Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, min sharri ma khalaq, wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab, wa min sharri an-nafathati fil 'uqad, wa min sharri hasidin idha hasad." The one right before the last. Wa min sharri hasidin idha hasad. The hasad, again, is the jealousy that we have, again, and the envy that we have, again, within our hearts. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us, again, the steps, as the sister was asking, the immediate steps is to, again, begin our study of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and embark upon that study. And there are some wonderful YouTube lessons, both from Sheikh Mufti Mink and even Dr. Yasser Khadi and others who are out there who we can draw upon, and then begin again a determined effort to implement those lessons of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And then, as Sheikh Yahya said, then go out into our community of Muslims and begin to again encourage and push the Muslim brothers and sisters that are in our community to begin to follow that path, and let us project this model of unity and partnership. And one of the greatest ways that we can also, again, begin partnership, as you say, is begin spending money collectively, and then even begin intermarrying. And the idea that the Prophet ﷺ, again, goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of the big problem within our communities, is that there are not enough marriages that are taking place. And this is one of the problems that has led to the rampant homosexuality and the same-sex relationships, because there are not enough marriages. And so Islam provides an answer to that, because Allah says that if you, again, take one or two or three or even four wives, and that's the lesson, that's the direction. And again, when women are looking to be married, and if you are a man, particularly a man of means, then why not? And this is the opportunity that we have for us now to provide this type of support to our community. And so we are encouraging everybody to do four things. One, please share and like this particular YouTube video or Facebook video. Let people know about this journey. We ask that you support this by at least asking Allah to bless us with success and making dua for it. Third of all, we have, and the links that we'll provide you on the video, some areas where you can, become a sponsor. And the idea is to actually build a fund similar to the funds that Bernie Sanders, built in his campaign, where people were donating even $5 a week, to the point where we can actually invest in, collaborations between Muslims of different ethnicity and different tribes. And then we can begin using some of these funds to actually solve some of the problems that are in the community, such as the health problems, such as the mental health problems, such as the issues of education right now, particularly with respect to distance learning. So these are the types of things that we can do. And then lastly, as was discussed before, the idea of having different masajid or different Islamic centers based upon culture right now in the context of a global pandemic is impossible, because almost every one of these Islamic centers are going to have to be retrofitted and go through some major renovations in order to prevent people from catching the COVID-19 virus. And so the entire community is going to have to come together to make sure that our Islamic centers, such as Masjid Muhammad and the Islamic Center, and the Masjid, the Imam Center, and the other masajid, and even just DC are kept in a way and that will allow them to continue to operate free of COVID. But that's not going to, and it should not fall upon the shoulders of any particular ethnic group in Islam. It should fall upon the responsibility of us all as Muslims. And that, dear brothers and sisters, I believe is the answer. If once we begin to work together collectively in that manner, I do believe that we will have, again, an ability to show the entire nation a model that is devoid of racism, and again, a model of success both in this life and the next. So we thank Allah, and I think Imam Jami is coming back in. Let me just ask everybody to kind of give us a closing remark to end. Imam Talib, Sheikh Yahya, and then we'll close out with a dua with Imam Jami. Imam Talib. Closing remarks. Imam Talib, can you hear me? Okay. Imam Talib may be. Imam Talib, can you hear me? Can you give closing remarks? Sheikh Yahya, and then we'll close out with a dua with Imam Jami. Imam Talib.
Okay.
Closing remarks. Imam.
Can you hear me?
Imam Talib may be. Imam Talib, can you hear me? Can you give closing remarks?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Yes, sir. We can. What Islam? We hear you.
Hey, I got two computers up now. I can hear you. One can with.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes,
and I want
Imam,
to take the time to tackle this subject as well.
Okay.
And I want to also apologize to my guests. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, for having me, I really appreciate it.
Yes.
This is a very important topic, and I pray Allah that the subject is maximized and it gets distributed, and we can tackle it again to continue to expand on it, because we need this. We need the model that Allah Ta'ala have called us to be. He said we're the best community brought out for the good of all people, which means that we have to have a model to show people how Allah wants us to live. And if we don't do that, then we're cheating them from something that Allah created us to show them what He wants for all mankind. Thank you again, and I extend my best regards to our dear Sheikh and our dear Imam as well as you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Sheikh Yahya?
Yeah, if I wanted to leave a quick sort of closing remark, it would be to be the change that you want to see in the world. You know, again, it may sound corny, but it really starts with yourself. I mean, a lot of people who are activists, what they end up doing is they end up setting a goal that's like a really, really, really high goal and may not even be achievable. And then they burn themselves out before they reach it. I think, you know, in a practical way, you actually achieve more by setting smaller goals that are achievable. And the number one goal that should always be achievable is to change yourself, because you have control over that. And then maybe after changing yourself, you'll inspire one or two other people to change as well. And then the three of you can work together and you'll become stronger because now you're a group. And maybe that group will inspire a few others, and you seek out the people who are like-minded and you grow in that way. And inshallah, you can make a difference after some time. But if you try to change everybody or millions of people at once, I think you'll find that, you know, they're not ready. You kind of have to meet people where they are and do things step by step. So again, my final sort of last word is be the change that you want to see in society.
Imam Jami?
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and purge our hearts, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change the condition of a people until they change what was in their own souls. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Walas inna insana lafi khus illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr.
MashaAllah, this has been
really enjoyed myself, brothers and sisters.
Alhamdulillah, this has been an amazing program, and we thank Allah for allowing us to have the opportunity to have such great speakers. Again, we thank Dr. Nisa Muhammad from Howard University. We thank Preacher Moss. We thank Imam Talib Sharif from the Nation's Masjid, the Nation's Mosque, Washington, D.C. We thank Sheikh Yahya from Baltimore, and we thank Allah for blessing us with Imam Jami, who is very beloved, as he was one of the students and the assistant leaders in the community that was led by my late father, Dr. Talib Kareem Muhammad. We ask that Allah showers His mercy and protection upon us all as we seek to go and do the work to bring us to the end of racism, the day in which we will be, as Dr. King suggested, a society in which the people will be judged by the content of their character, and not their tribe, not their ethnicity, and not the color of their skin. May Allah bless us to realize that, and allow us to be the models of that. So with any further ado, we look forward to continuing this journey next week. Same places on YouTube and Facebook or via Zoom. Join us, share this broadcast, like the show, and keep us in your dua. Support the program, and again, let us engage with one another, become the brothers and the sisters to one another, become the partners, and let us bring this nation to the end of racism once and for all. Subhanaka wa bihamdika wa astaghfirullah la ilaha wa atubu ilayk. May Allah have mercy upon us, shower upon us His mercy, and give us the guidance following the great example of the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. We bid you good night, and in the Arabic word of peace, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.